Hello and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to those who have an interest in property. And Property Matters is, of course, sponsored by Fairview International and Town and Country Property Auctions London. From subsidence to stamp duty, there's never a week when the news isn't full of things about property. And as always, we'd love your comments on our stories today, both in the comments below the video, of course, that you're watching now, and also via our email address, which is propertymatterstv@gmail.com. And you can also email us during the week with feedback on the show or any of the items that you'd like us to cover at any particular time. Joining us as always, our resident property expert, Joe Joshi. We're at the end of another month, Joe. Where's that gone?
Time flies, isn't it, before you know it? And the stories and properties continue to just keep coming. They're just firing left, right, and centre. What a great time to be in property in terms of when you're looking to buy. The government is throwing money at it, throwing opportunities at it, and I think it'll be an exciting conversation.
And we're just 3 days away from the budget. I mean, the excitement knows no bounds.
Absolutely, in every possible way. I mean, he's holding his nerve, as they say. Well, he's one of my sayings, hold your nerves, and Rishi is holding his nerve. Even this morning, he was being prompted left, right, and centre to talk about his taxes and whatever else that he could actually do. But no, he was playing his cards very close to the chest.
Well, the market seems pretty... Sorry?
And rightly so, I said.
The market seems to be looking at what Rishi's going to be doing and making its decisions, as we'll find out in our news stories today. The first one of those, of course, was just this weekend, where the Chancellor has announced that there's going to be a completely new stamp duty holiday extension, new mortgage guarantee scheme. That's it, to help first-time buyers. Sorry, can't read my own writing. So obviously, Richie's worst-kept secret is the stamp duty holiday, Joe, the extension till the end of June. But this was a bit of a surprise and good news, I would have thought, to first-time buyers. A 95% LTV mortgage guarantee scheme.
It's been in the horizon, actually, Paul, for a while. They've sort of have had murmurs of it, but not quite been able to pin it. As you may remember, that there was a Help to Buy scheme launch in 16th of December, which we covered in our program, which was also sort of targeted at the 95% market. But the truth be known, since the pandemic, the 95% model has been off the shelf, and lenders have been a bit cautious in terms of why they wouldn't want to increase the amount. But, as I have always said, and we have always discussed on this program, there is nothing more pivotal than the actual property market itself. And that is the driver. Building our way out of our problems is the right way. There is a huge shortage of homes, and the opportunity for first-time buyers. In fact, I would say there's never been a better opportunity than the one that is around the corner and being offered right now, for not just first-time buyers, but any buyers that are beginning to start to look at and putting their foot on the first rung of the ladder, as opposed to be perhaps looking at long-term rental, which is what the roadmap is stating, or it's what the Prime Minister wants, is a generation of home ownership as opposed to a generation of renters, taking back the Margaret Thatcher days of own your own home back in the 80s. And I think he really wants to drive that. So it's excellent news for the housing market, excellent news for those that want to have homes. But moreover, I think it's important for all the other businesses related, which will be a subject we'll cover a bit later on.
Yeah, I mean, Boris has said he wants this generation to be generation buy, not generation rent, I think he said this week. And this scheme of 95% LTV will be for properties up to 600,000.
Yes, I mean 600,000 is a good number for most people, no matter where you are, because the average house price is now sort of bordering on 300,000 in some areas and 500 in others. So it's within the realms of everyone's achievement. It's a good number to go, and also it's a fairly safe number in the economy overall for the government to say they'll offer some support in order to try and make sure that lenders, financial institutions are prepared to lend to people with that. I mean, we've got some opportunities that are coming ourselves, new developments in and around the Windsor area, which we're launching just after the 15th. So we're following the budget's route. And those are all going to fall into both the categories, really, for the first-time buyers, and hopefully the long-awaited extension of the stamp duty, which I think we have again covered time and time again here, and we know that it's all going to be eventually there. He's got no choice to run it parallel to the roadmap recovery that they've been talking about, which will sort of go and take them to the end of June or thereabouts.
And this week, Joe, we had the new Zoopla UK House Price Index report for January, which makes some very interesting reading. House prices currently growing at 4.3%. That's 1.7% higher than a year ago. These are the headline figures. Highest level of growth since 2017. Demand for housing remains elevated, 12.4% higher than this time last year. But it looks like, Joe, sellers are reluctant to list their homes, which is pushing prices higher. So there's evidence that there's plenty of interest in the market, but people are holding back from listing their homes.
It goes back to the old adage of supply and demand. And whilst sellers are waiting for putting their houses on the market, the demand is it's pent up in the sense that buyers are out there looking for their first home. Opportunities are probably the best that they've ever been for a long, long time. And it will come. I mean, spring is traditionally a good time for people to start moving, thinking. We've had a very unprecedented last 12 months in our lives. And obviously people have got to think very carefully about their strategy. But I think the long and the short of it is that it has given us all a different direction, Paul, a different direction of how we're going to think about where we live, what move we have, and how we're going to actually get about that. So I think come the spring is here. I mean, to be honest with you, the daffodils are out. So the reality is that people over the next few months will start, as kids tend to go back to school, as some sort of normality clicks in. And part of the reason there's been a shortage on houses coming onto the market is because it's an impossible task with the family and the kids being at home, trying to arrange for viewings and showing people around and keeping the place tidy and all those things that we need to do to try and make an effort to sell the houses that we want to, or the properties that we want to. Accessibility has been a very, very challenging thing with the pandemic, and people are still very conscious and cautious about who they let in and how they let in. So that's part of the reason why people have been holding back as far as listing their properties, not for the want that I think they want to move and they've got the plans in their mind to do so.
It's interesting to see that first-time buyers this time last year, Joe, were being squeezed by the fact that they just couldn't get 95% loan-to-value mortgages. I mean, those that didn't have the bigger deposits were really struggling to get any kind of finance product at all. And so this year, it's not surprising to see that the demand is up 5% year on year for first-time buyers. They're more active in the market this past 6 weeks as well, looking like they're coming in to see, because they think that the stamp duty holiday is going to be extended. And also, it's not just that, it's the fact that obviously there's these new higher loan-to-value products on the market, and I guess the scheme that's going to be announced on Wednesday is going to help as well. But you can see on the slide there, Joe, just exactly the problem. Demand is up 12.4%, and the flow of supply is down by even more, down 14.5% in some cases here. So you can see, which is all this is doing is pushing prices up.
Yeah, so that is maybe the secret tool to try and get the best possible price for each seller, given where we are in our life. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of costs have gone in. People have lost their jobs. Those are part of the reason maybe that people are not being able to put their house on the market, because they have their own agenda, own issue to consider. However, there is lots and lots of houses that we can continue to being built. Developers have been hard at work. The building industry has not really let up. You try and get a hold of a developer or a builder right now who hasn't got a site that isn't building. They're all on site building, and have done so throughout the pandemic. I mean, it's one of the areas that was pretty much left alone because it was in the open space, and therefore people could get on with building. There's a shortage of housing supply. It always has been. Every successive government has had a challenge to try and fill the shortage, and Boris is no different. If anything, it is one section that has kept everybody afloat. As long as there's building being done, there's been people out there, builders been building away, and there's been jobs continued. And of course, it's relative. It's unfortunate that the other things that are sort of within the closed area, the restaurant, the hospitality industry, and those things have suffered tremendously. But I think there's also equally good news on the horizon for the high street and for the hospitality industry, because they need to get that back up to steam very, very quickly.
Yes, and we've seen some announcements about that in the news today for grants for the high street, which is certainly good news. So there we can see rise in the first-time buyer demand up 5%. But what's interesting here, Joe, is the increase in the number of cash buyers. So the biggest part of the market, as you might expect, are those who are homeowners who have a mortgage. Then your first-time buyers are growing quite nicely, 31%. But look at the growth there. From the cash owner investor. So whilst we're also hearing in this report that some landlords are selling because they're worried about capital gains tax and tax changes in general. So we're seeing people are selling, but I guess what this is saying is that there are other people coming in and taking an opportunity as a cash buyer.
Absolutely. When you look at what interest rates are available for any investor that is sitting with money sitting on their account, of course, when you show an average increase in house prices of nearly 8% throughout the last year, and still a chance to earning more, it makes eminent sense to turn around and say, well, actually, in having my couple of £100,000 or £100,000 sitting in a bank account isn't actually earning me the interest rate. I may as well go and buy and invest in the property. And it goes back to my continuous harp on about the property is the hub. It is what creates everything going. People will continue to buy, irrespective of where and what has happened in our lifetimes. It's the bit that actually helps them. They can stand in that front door and go, actually, this is mine, or I've invested in it. They could touch it, see it, and feel it. And that is a very, very big thing here. It's a key thing, Paul, for people to have that confidence, because it's the things that they don't understand and they don't see that actually don't. And this is what investors are doing. They're looking at it and saying, okay, yes, there are going to be potentially tax rises. Yes, the tax on CGT, would actually potentially go in line with income. But if you weigh it up against, having no income or it's sitting there doing nothing, I think, people will continue to buy, continue to invest in property, and continue to invest in other parts of the country where communication has become a key thing now. And I think a lot more people are seriously looking at that. So it's absolutely a great time for people that want to consider to get into the property market. And of course, that then has a knock-on effect.
There's a suggestion in the report, Joe, that it suggests that also part of that rise in cash buyers is that some people are using the equity in their property to make the next move. So I suppose in a way kind of downsizing, but going up as the price has risen, but using their equity to move to another property rather than taking more loans on. Interesting thought.
It is an interesting thought, but it's not a thought that has never been there, Paul. It's always been there. People do tend to refinance, take out the equity of their property, and then decide that they can actually invest in something else that's generating more income. There also is the opportunity when they release that equity and become the bank of mum and dad and help their children to get on that property ladder, putting deposits down. And there has been the time when people have remortgaged and downsized or sold a bigger plot and gone into a lower or smaller property. I mean, it's a cycle that has been going on for decades, as far as I'm concerned. It's just that everybody needs to sometimes put brakes on in their life and look at their own personal circumstances and say, is this right for me? And will this be the right thing to do right now? But the way the economy has been and the way the government has been amazingly supportive of all of us, and there's always going to be people that are unhappy about this, but the long and the short of it is that we've been through an absolute crisis and hopefully not long coming through the other end. And it has, given the opportunity. The other thing is, of course, Paul, I don't know if you realize that, when people haven't been out, going out on their posh dinners and going to the pub weekly and so forth, they've actually saved a hell of a lot of money too. And that money is now money that is being used towards deposits and driving that, which is why the 5% opportunity is an excellent opportunity, because, from £100,000 borrowing, we're talking about £5,000 in terms of, what the deposit would, that's just ridiculous, really, when you think that at the moment people have been asked for 15 to 20,000 pounds as 15 to 20% as a deposit, which is a big challenge. So people have saved in the last year, and whilst there have been people that have lost jobs and there have been people that have lost loved ones, is another side, there's a flip side to that, and that is that there are people that have actually ended up saving money, and by saving that money, they've actually ended up, having a deposit to get onto the property market.
And there's
you love your graphs, don't you?
I know. Well, Zoopla gives us the golden opportunity for graphs, of course, once a month when they come out with these reports. But it's interesting to see that the number of homes that were once rented but now up for sale, and this particularly is skewed in London. So 13% of homes that were on the market, 13% of those properties on the market were once rented and are now up for sale. So, and you can see London on the side there, where that's significantly skewed. But across the country, pretty much, apart from Northern Ireland and Scotland, there's an increase as people look to sell rental properties. And if you looked on the previous page, the buy-to-let mortgages were down as well. So it does look like the perhaps even the accidental landlords, maybe they've lost their appetite.
Only because it's certainly in places like London, we do survive by the international market, and you have to bear in mind that a lot of people haven't been able to travel or been restricted to travel across, and the day the aircraft start flying over Heathrow and traveling around, all of these figures will change because people do want to invest. Britain is, England, London is one of the safest places in the world to invest property, the safest place to live, irrespective of the odd knife crime that we hear about here. But in the grand scheme, you can walk safely on the streets of our country, and that drives people from all over the world to come into places like London and Birmingham and Manchester, where children are their children are at university. They invest in property. They want to buy. They know that it's a good return. They want to live here. They use it as their summer holiday breaks coming into the United Kingdom. Some people that actually live abroad because that's where they have places here. They come here for 90 days of the year to come and spend their time with their family and friends. So once that is open, all of these statistics will change. But that's because right now people are not able to get into the country and have been scared. But the good news is that they've had lots of vaccination that's happened. The NHS have done a fantastic job. The doctors are doing a great job, and hopefully, as the roadmap says, by the end of June, we might actually have a summer pool.
Indeed. Last one, which is the prediction for the end of the year, which is an interesting one. So December 2021, where will we be? Well, they're predicting that growth will be around 1% by the end of the year. So overall, that's an interesting prediction, and so it does look like, certainly from Zoopla's point of view, and we've heard a number of people saying that it'll be a year of two halves. It does look like things will slow after the end of June.
Well, traditionally, in all honesty, Paul, as much as you want to throw as much negativity at me on this one, I'm not going to take it. And traditionally, June, July, August are pretty much dead months anyway, because they are seen as holidays. Kids are on their summer holidays, and this year the kids have got a completely different package on it. And come September, I almost challenge you to see what your figures and graphs are going to start to look like when they say the last quarter, forget about the two halves of this year, what the last quarter will start to look like in terms of your graphs. And you'll be saying to me, all right, I'll give it up now. But you won't. I know you won't, because you love your graphs.
Well, one thing that came out of the report that was really interesting was that the disparity, and it's probably only the market just levelling itself up actually, but if you look at Manchester and Liverpool in particular, they had the biggest growth year on year, up nearly 7% in both those cities' cases. So it does look like the north-south divide is starting to ease out a little bit, and certainly that's an opportunity a place for an opportunity if you're a prospective buy-to-let buyer, perhaps.
Absolutely. Again, it's really about the connectivity there. And as the high-speed rail network idea continues to roll out, the future for those areas that are going to get connected by the high-speed rail are going to be good news for property investors, buy-to-let, and even the first-time buyers. And if you remember your graphs and charts last week, you had areas marked out where house prices were at a certain level and they were well below sort of £200,000 and still potential of connectivity. Well, just take that on board for a second and look at the 95% potential mortgage offering and no stamp duty potentially. I mean, there's never ever been a better time for someone to say, you know what? And then if you take the pandemic on board to make things better or worse, depending how you see it, and that is that people are moving out of the bigger cities, are traveling. I mean, I spoke to somebody recently who said it was easier for them to live in Leicester and travel by train an hour and a half than it is sometimes to live in North London to try to get to South London. I mean, that could take you 2 hours just to get in from one side to the other within London, and yet you could travel from the north down to the south in lesser time. So people are really taking that on board. And I'm not going to say the magical word because I know there's bets on and wagers are on this week. And I'm conscious that, you know, I don't want to give the benefit of that, but there are other drivers in those things that we talk about as connections for people when they're moving, and people are moving out. I mean, the opportunities are great. So there's a lot more choice in the other areas that are available. I mean, through my auction at the moment, I've got a property in Aylesbury, for example, a lovely 2-bedroom flat. You know, 170, 180,000 pounds is and so well within the means of someone at 95%, well within the means of no stamp duty, and not really at the end of the world. I mean, Aylesbury is not particularly that far.
Be very interesting to see what our viewers think of the latest statistics and the latest predictions. Will it be 1% by the end of the year? What do you think? Do get in touch on the video below and give us your comments, and we'll bring you into the conversation on property matters as the programme progresses. So, Joe, it looks like it's official. HMRC, and you know when they tell you it's happening, it's definitely happening. So year on year, we're 24% up on new transactions. So thanks to the stamp duty holiday, definitely working. 121,000 transactions undertaken in January of this year. So that's quite an achievement considering it's the time of year that it is.
Well, that is driven by the race to the end for the 31st of March for the stamp duty. And again, and he's going to Rishi, our man Rishi here, is going to, extend the deadline a little bit, I'm sure, which we'll get in the next couple of days. There's enough hints about it. And if he's talking about aligning everything to the roadmap, which theoretically is the longest day, I believe, 21st of June.
Yeah.
It might be the longest day, it might be the shortest day, depending how you see it and where you are. But the long and the short of it is that, you know, that's the drop dead date that they're challenging towards. And so, yes, I mean, the numbers are there, and it goes back to the point that property is a focal point. People will continue to buy, and those numbers there show you that irrespective of personal circumstances, lockdown, pandemic, etc., there is still an appetite for owning your home or investing in property. There's never a moment that has been passed on that point.
Yeah, the post-Christmas lockdown certainly did little to dampen enthusiasm in the market, that's for sure. But we did see, interestingly, that the number of transactions in January was 2.5% lower than it was in December. So I guess the peak was the people getting involved in December so that they could complete certainly by 31st of March. So it'll be interesting to see when the extension is announced on Wednesday, whether we see February's figures rise up. And many people are saying, well, why are we just extending the cliff edge to a little bit further into the year? Because it does seem as if that's all that's happening.
Yeah, but I mean, you're going to get, look, people like us sitting here talking about this and the other pundits, it wouldn't be news if they didn't put a bit of dampener on it, would it? I mean, I'm not into dampeners. I think it's excellent news. But of course, cliffhangers and nail biting and all that kind of stuff is great headline conversation. But the reality is that yes, if that deadline is extended, which is pretty highly likely it will be Wednesday at the budget, it will give people enough time to get in and get on and buy and get this. That is a roll on to the other parts of the businesses that the high street is desperate for now, and other areas are going to be desperate for, because it will be a knock-on effect. And I think that February figures, as soon as next couple of days he announces these other changes, you will start to see the February March figures leading into sort of May June, all good news, and it will change your second half of the statistics, Paul.
Indeed. Certainly website or agents on their websites reporting the same thing. I mean, it really is a good news story, as you say, Joe. Vendors, potential vendors up 12% and buyers up 11%. So inquiries and vendors all up, which is got to be good news. So that seems to support what you're saying.
Yes, I mean, look, we've had time to sit down and think. We've been in a lockdown. We've lost loved ones. We missed loved ones. These sort of things do take stock and time in your whole adjustment of your family, and you think about what you're going to do next and how you want to be. I mean, if I haven't had that conversation with a number of people where they say this pandemic has really made me think about what I'm doing, how I'm going to do this, and how much time and energy I'm going to do into work, how much space time I've got. A home comes into it. One of the top 5 subjects on any dinner table today is property, moving home, renting, buying, selling, extending, developing, knocking down, getting planning permission. It just is never ending in that sense. And it's all about what circumstances fit what person. And those things that happen in that, Paul, are the things that have the knock-on effect for the people in the high street. And my heart goes out to those in the high street. They've had a really tough time in this thing, and the world has become an online thing with everything. Look at us. We're just sitting here on a Sunday morning having a conversation. It's all changed in that way, and we've got to change with it. And there's just going to be other routes to market and other ways that people are going to deal with it. But the core, the bicycle hub, as I call it, in the middle of it, with all the spokes going out, is property, and the government's seen it. They actually appreciate it for a change, as opposed to making it a tough thing. They're making it interesting by saying, here are things that we are going to throw at the property market. Here are the opportunities to build more houses. Here are permitted development rights that says you don't have to go through a long, prolonged, drawn out thing about turning maybe offices into residential flats, etc. There's so many opportunities that have been actually thrown at this. And then there are other subjects that come off of that separately.
It's interesting you mentioned online there, Joe, because it does suggest that the marketplace, the buyers and the sellers, are very keen and quite happy with the new digital way that estate agency has gone. Because, as we've mentioned previously on the show, the whole way that you buy a house has changed dramatically thanks to COVID.
Yes, and I think all for the good in some cases and all bad for in other cases. Obviously, it's important that every time somebody wants to buy a house or view a house, they'd like to go and see it physically. Maybe call me old-fashioned in this case, but I'm probably one of those that would like to stand in there, and I still do. Sometimes when a client instructs me, I will travel to the other side of the country simply to stand there and get a feel for whether it's right or wrong. And so much more comes out of being there at the time. I've been to properties where, my view and my perspective has been actually completely different to those that actually live it. Because when you're in something, you don't actually see it. When you're out there, you walk in and you can see some of the obvious things. And I think so that is an area that I think I probably feel, I know they're trying to digitalize it and you can do these things, but really my advice always would be, even if you can't go inside the property, do travel to the location. And try and stand there and picture yourself in that. And that then takes me straight onto my subject of it presenting itself. If something is not presented well and it looks rubbish and people haven't taken care of their exterior, then people will make their decision immediately, because the first 10 seconds of anybody turning up outside your house is a deciding factor, because they're looking at the neighborhood, they're looking at the street, they're looking at the house itself, and they're looking at how well you're presented. And if you've done a good job, but your neighbors haven't, they decide to themselves that maybe it's not an area they want to live in because the neighbors haven't made an effort. So I always urge everybody to work together and make sure that everyone does that. If they do their bit, the chances are maybe the neighbors might be embarrassed to do their bit into it. But you just got to work and coax with that, because that makes a lot of difference. That presentation, that whole first impression makes a lot of difference in the value that somebody is prepared to pay. At the end of the day, a home is only worth what somebody is prepared to pay for it. But if they feel right and they feel comfortable, they will say, okay, I want to live here. This makes me feel good. So that aspect of it will never change as far as I'm concerned. But yes, online viewings, online everything else is fantastic. The chance of being able to sit in your living room and punch in a postcode and go, I want to live in Devon for argument's sake, and here it is, and what's available in Devon. But I would still urge that when you get the chance, drive to Devon and find out that you're not next to a working station of some sort of, or an electric station or whatever that might be.
Yeah. Or a cement works.
or a cement works, or even any other works that you might not actually thoroughly enjoy as time goes on. So it is important to go and visit. Whilst they manage to sort out the interest in the online viewing and online sale of the property, I'm desperate to see that somehow the legal profession can get their act together on that as well, because if anything really bucks the trend in all the good that's been happening, it's really the system is so archaic, so many things that you can do, yet people will sit there and go, oh, that'll take 6 weeks, that'll take 4 weeks, and that really does bugger up the scenario. And that's part of the reason the stamp duty noise is being made for extension. It's not because the buyer doesn't want to buy, and it's not because the seller doesn't want to sell. It's the bit in the middle. It's the lenders that decide that they want to muck around a little bit, and it's the legal profession who spend half their life going back and forward on a couple of questions, which I'm sure, if you take the modern idea of online, must be able to be made faster. But time will tell. I'm sure that'll be the next challenge.
Yeah, it's true to say that the system has been transformed, but it's far from perfect, is it really?
Yeah. So it's going to be a long time. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be good news. Now, I want to have you got any more charts for me before I go on?
I've got one more story.
Oh, all right then.
Let's just get this out of the way, because it's just important for this is around landlords and renters, tenants. Basically, the Client Money Protection Scheme, and this is obviously becoming the news because there's a month to go till the new scheme comes in. So the CMP scheme, Client Money Protection Scheme, is basically to try and get rid of rogue landlords, those that are not registered, and they take your deposits, they hold your deposits, but they don't hold them in a client account. And now, if you don't do that and have a proper system, a regulated system, which is what the CMP scheme will be, you face a fine of up to £30,000. It seems to be particularly prevalent, Joe, in London. London Trading Standards saying there's quite a lot of these landlords being prosecuted now. Over 100 agents in London, believe it or not, Joe, have already been served with a formal notice of intent by their local council because they don't come up to the scheme. So what's interesting, if we just have a quick look here, so to give people some more information on this. So this is from the government website. You can be fined £30,000. It's different, interestingly, if you're in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, but we won't dwell on that too much. All the information's on the website, of course. But basically, these schemes make sure landlords and tenants are compensated if they cannot repay the money. So basically, if they go into administration or they just run off with the money, that kind of thing. These are the protections that tenants have in place. And there are 6 approved schemes. There they are: Client Money Protect, Money Shield, Property Mark, RICS, Safe Agent, which used to be called NALS, and UKALA, Client Money Protection. So they've basically got to be registered into those schemes, or they're going to face some fairly hefty fines, which obviously is good news. It's protection for tenants. It's going to clean up the industry a little bit. But is it something that you see regularly, Joe?
Yeah, I mean the industry per se, the letting industry itself, was brought into this line some years back now, probably going back nearly 10 years or so, when the client money protection scenario came in. Obviously, independent and individual landlords were perhaps not part of that. In some schemes, they had to provide that if they were holding the deposit, that they were actually providing the protection. And in a lot of cases, agents, give the deposit to the client because the client wants it, i.e. the landlord wants it, he wants to hold it, he wants to deal with it, and they've got to provide security or cover to say that they've actually put it into one of the schemes that were available. It's not new news in terms of the agency world, but it is certainly new news in terms of independent and individual landlords. And that is primarily because there are a lot of landlords that now hold a good number of properties as part of their portfolio. And some of them may only do their own letting, so they may not be. So by not being a letting agent, they kind of take themselves out of that protective bubble of being a letting agent, and letting agents will have to have the protection, but as individual landlords, they think they don't need it. So it's good news for the tenants, obviously, that they get protected by the independents as well as through the letting agents. All of these things are streamlining to give the best possible protection for both landlords and for tenants going forward. There's only, I think it's not so much relevant to sort of like independent one or two landlords, who hold one or two properties, but I think it's more relevant for those that actually have a portfolio of their own that they manage. And there's quite a lot of landlords that now hold, a good number of properties of their own, and there is revenue there that needs to be protected.
Well, it's interesting that they're going to have at least a website, and if not an office, because there's a £5,000 fine for not displaying the certificate, and you must display that on your website and in any premises where you meet the public. So a landlord's going to have at least a website. So I guess the important thing is if you're looking to rent a property, if you're going to become a tenant, or if you're a tenant and you're looking to move, then you need to go and check with the agent that you're using or the landlord you're using that information is on display, and if not, report them.
Yeah, I mean that's become standard, and of course, can you imagine how many landlords will now have to go and create themselves a website to be able for somebody to say, look, I'm providing the appropriate certification to provide the protection that obviously tenants are doing. And in some cases, they might be best to work with the agents, because obviously agents will do that in general anyway. But the rule is, basically how much money they're going to save by not paying the agent. So the question is, do they spend the money managing and dealing with their website, or do they manage to spend their money with the agent? And I can tell you, they will be probably wiser to spend it with the agent, not with trying to do their own website, unless of course they're doing 30 to 50 to 100 properties of theirs, which I understand they'll have to do. But if you're doing a few, to actually go and get a website put together and to manage it and update it and so forth, is probably a bigger challenge than saying I'll pay the fee to the agent and let him do with it.
Yes.
But and that will continue. That always is a challenge between landlords and agents.
Yeah. It's another level of regulation and things that have to be observed in an already highly regulated industry. But there's a lot of potential at stake here for problems unless we have those protections in place.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Good. Okay, well, let's take a look at a property of the week, a feature that we love to do from time to time when we have something really juicy we want to tell everybody about. And we have this lovely hotel here, Joe, that you wanted to show everybody this week. So let's just take a look and you tell us about it while I go through some lovely views.
Lovely. So, Town and Country Property Auction London, we are really proud to being instructed on this lovely hotel. A 68-bedroom hotel in Warwickshire, beautiful countryside, beautiful part of the world, actually, Shakespeare country. Super location, 9 acres of property with a couple of hundred parking spaces, coaches, etc. Really a great instruction for us, but equally a great opportunity for anyone that's coming into the hospitality industry. Whilst I fully appreciate the hospitality industry has had a knockback, but watch the next 2, 3, 4 months, and you will wish you would be the owner of this. As the wedding season starts to come upon, it holds up to 450, 500 people for banqueting. Great opportunity. We're guiding it at 3.5 million pound, and yeah, give me a call if you're into the hospitality industry and want to own a hotel. It's a great international property trophy for somebody who wants to look at that. When you drive there and see that, look at those lovely pictures, you'd want to be in that hotel and own it, walk around, prance around as you're the governor. I do that for 30 seconds of it when I wander around there, but that's about it, really.
How many bedrooms did you say again, Joe?
It's 68 bedrooms, 2 or 3 conference rooms, and lots of parking, lots of landscape. You can land your own helicopter there, Paul. I know you would long to do that, so we can allow you to just fly in and fly out again.
It is a brave person that's going to take that on at the moment, obviously, because it is. But as you say, there is a springboard there. Once June 21st, all being well, comes along, and this could well be something that really does fly once again.
Well, I mean, I understand the numbers is what everybody will talk about, but you couldn't build it for the money that we're marketing it for, and that's the key thing. I mean, there was a time when it was, fetching a lot more, but for the money that we're guiding it at, you couldn't actually start building it. So definitely a good investment for those that are looking to invest at this moment in time into the hospitality industry.
So that property is in the auction for the 27th of April. How should people go about talking to you if they're interested?
Drop me a line here. Contact me at Town and Country Property Auctions London, and those that have my mobile, give me a call 07769 176 299. And happy to discuss it. Happy to see it. I'm going to be up there a couple of times next week. Already been up there last week, showing people around. So I'm confident that we will find a home for it very, very soon. But yeah, great opportunity for Town and Country, and great opportunity for those who want to buy it. So come on, give me a call.
Okay, so coming towards the end of the show, and a topic of the week, as you always like to discuss, and we're talking making the most of DIY, Joe.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, I think I like to cover little snippets each time, and part of today's subject is going to be DIY. And the reason why it's DIY is that, as I've hinted throughout the program today, that when people are out there buying, moving, it actually then generates another part of the business, and that is the DIY business. So, you're out there looking at new bathrooms, kitchens, and now that the spring is here, the outside, the gardens, the fencing, etc., all of those things start to come into our thoughts. And as they do, it's those businesses on the high street that have been suffering, or the big open markets that have been suffering, that it will benefit. And I think it's time that we all looked at that and supported those businesses as well. And the property industry does that. So I think it's very important to take on board that the housing market is it is a central point, and off that comes so many spokes that start to help other people, be it from soft furnishings, bedding, the list is totally ended. It is all around the home, even to the point where cars are important. Because 9 times out of 10, I've seen in my time that when people have bought a house, within a month, 2 months, or whatever, a car follows, because they want to now upgrade their car to look great on their new drive, and things start looking. It's a feel-good factor. I've always used an analogy that we gauge our wealth. I'll say it again, we gauge our wealth by the value of our home. The reason why we gauge our wealth by the value of our home is when house prices have been going up, as they have done in 2020, around 8%. Most people feel confident and comfortable and want to do things to their properties, upgrade them, new kitchens, new bathrooms, decorating perhaps, fencing, driveways, outside, new cars. All of those things start to become relevant. And whilst there's people out there who want to throw a lot of negativity in the marketplace about property, the good thing with this government that's been in situ and done so in the last 12 months or so, because don't forget, they came into power at the tail end of 2019, and literally were thrown a curveball within the first 3 months of them being in there. And I think they've done well. They've supported the businesses, supported the families. There's always going to be someone that they haven't supported or haven't helped. And I think that what you've got to do is look at what's available. People have saved. Look at your home, walk across the road, take a step back, have a look, see what needs doing, and then go out and then do it. And we cover the outside, we covered the entrance porch. And today I just want to bring on board the inside, the kitchen area, the directing, and how important the utility room has now become, which wasn't so important before, because we used to knock all the walls out and have it open plan. But having people at home now has made it more valuable to have other rooms, especially when you want to be online and do your programs, and you want to sit down and talk to somebody on Zoom. You want the peace and so forth. And all of a sudden, having an open plan with somebody washing up their dishes and making the noise becomes very, very uncomfortable. So the industry will change. The business will continue to change its models as time goes. But the demand and the supply and the demand for owning your own home will never go away. It hasn't done in 40 years that I've been in the business. I can't see it going away now. Even Boris Johnson is saying to him, become a generation of home owners as opposed to home renters. And that is going to be your strapline going forward as they provide this 95% mortgage back in the system, and obviously hopefully extend the stamp duty. So I expect that the housing market and the DIY stores and all those businesses that are related to the housing market to do well. But the main thing is think about it. Think about the builders you employ, think about the things that you do, and think about how that is. And if there's anything we can help you with, any guidance, having a look at it from an outside point of view. I'm not saying that we're experts. I'm sure the architects will tell you they're expert, but I actually don't even believe they're expert. They do the lines and draw it, but they don't always think about it logically. And we will give you a view, or I would give you a view based on what is demand. I was always told if somebody wants to buy a garden, then sell them the garden, but the garden's got to look great, and then give them the house free. And because that's what their wish and desire is. And that's what you've got to look at. Look at the best features of the property and try and make that the best sellable asset going forward. So I think that's excellent. We're looking forward to the news this week, and I'm sure we'll have a mortgage broker on with us next week to tell us where they can go and get this money that the governments are going to support and help.
Yes, it'd be great to talk to a mortgage advisor, because if you look at what we've just been talking about this morning, you've got the new Help to Buy higher loan to value mortgages scheme available. We've got record levels of low interest rates, etc. And we've got a Help to Buy scheme, and we've also got the stamp duty holiday. I mean, it's the truth of what you're saying, Joe, is that it's never been easier to get on the ladder, is it?
It's the best time. There's never been a better opportunity to be on the property ladder than the one that is currently staring us in front. And the fortunate thing is that whilst things have been closed, people have been able to maybe not have as much spending going down the pub and so forth, and that all has helped to go along. And the government's seen that. They've seen that. They know that people haven't been spending. This is the opportunity, and the way they can build them, get themselves out of this massive debt that they have also now accrued in borrowing, is to build their way out and to get support from people and to get the public back in. Yes, there will be tax rises. Look, we know that. Someone's got to pay for it at some stage, and somehow it's got to be paid. And there's no pain, no gain. That's life, isn't it? You've got to burn the calories in order to lose the weight. It's just one of those scenarios that we have to accept. And yes, there'll be people who say, oh, that's not right, and this is not right. But equally, they could have just sat on their hands and done nothing, and we could have had a major, major disaster on our hands. And the good thing is that we're all here to discuss the opportunities out there, and everybody should sort of really rally around and try and help each other and help the businesses so we can get back into some sort of normality. I'm sure the holiday companies will be delighted to see everybody back in the air. Can you imagine, even this hotel that we're offering, it was quite sad to walk around and not feel the buzz of a hotel, which you've seen, because obviously at the moment only houses sort of key workers or people that need that facility. But Shakespeare country, I mean, you'd think that was a buzzing and busy place, and it has been, but it's just right now it is a place that basically is quiet. But I think come the end of June, July, summer holidays, fingers crossed, with a fair wind behind us, we'll go forward. I will say this as a parting shot, and that is that when you look back, the byword and our best word in our conversation in 2018, 17, 18, and 19 was Brexit. And most people have actually forgotten the word Brexit in our conversations. It's not part of the byword anymore. Lockdown is, pandemic is, and God willing, in a year's time, it will also be a word that we could probably move on from. The British people are really good at moving on from these things, and I just think that we've got to try and turn it to a positive. I see the negative, and I know that we've all had family losses, and we've had job losses, and we had all those things. But you know, by the grace of God, we're all still here, and I think together we can actually make this happen in the right way. But I'm just going to say that, you know, every conversation I remember was discussing Brexit. And I was speaking to somebody the other day and I said, tell me what was the biggest byword, and they couldn't remember it. I said, Brexit. He said, you know what, you're right. We haven't actually had that conversation because all of a sudden it's become the past.
Something more important's come along.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be great to see our mortgage advisor with us next week. Looking forward to that very much indeed. And of course, we'll be packed full of graphs and charts next week, Joe, because we'll have had the budget and there'll be a wealth of information to pass on to everybody. So a couple of things to remember. Firstly, if you're in the market for mortgages, definitely the show is worth a watch next week, as we'll have our expert here. And you can, of course, get your questions in live, either in advance, propertymatterstv@gmail.com, or, of course, you can put them up there for the show on the day, as indeed Gertch has just done. So, Gertch, thank you very much indeed for your comments. Thank you, Paul and Joe, for the latest insight into the property market. As a local councillor in Maidenhead, I find your talks useful and informative. Keep it up. There we are, a little bit of gung-ho at the end to give us the enthusiasm to go into next week. Thank you, Gertch. That's very kind of you. Glad you find it interesting. We certainly find it very interesting putting it together, don't we, Joe?
Absolutely, I love it. I think it's great, and I'm often, you know, wondering what graphs he's going to throw at me, because I think he does it for testing me and see if I'm up to speed. But so far, I'm all right with it. You know, I am going to be stumped one of these days, because I'm sure he's going to try and catch me out. But we'll see.
It's like a weekly exam, isn't it, every week?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think you do test it out. You put it out and see if it's 40 years worth of knowledge is actually paying off or not, or am I just talking for the sake of talking? But I do try and keep up with it, Paul. So, you know, I don't mind. Throw your graphs at me as much as you like.
Indeed. Lovely. And on that note, I think we'll end for this week. Thank you very much indeed to everyone watching today. Hope you found the show of interest, and great to hear the feedback from Gertch there. We'll see you next week. It's all about the mortgages and, of course, all about the budget. So till 10 o'clock next Sunday, have a great week.